Fahrenheit 451. It's even titled above, if you look on the very top of your sheet, it even says Fahrenheit 451, the temperature at which book paper catches fire and burns. Now, this is actually not technically true all the time. There are different types of paper, and paper catches fire at different temperatures. But whenever, I guess, Ray Bradbury either made this number up off the top of his head or figured out that's when just wood catches fire, so that's what he uses here. But we have the beginnings of our book. We're going to be looking at the first 5 pages together, breaking it down up here so that you can really understand it, because our author, as we looked at last week with our short story, There Will Come Soft Rains, he writes very strangely. And if you're not careful and really focusing from the start, you might get lost. So that's what we're going to be working on today, is making sure that you are not lost. You will need out a pen or pencil of some sort, so please go ahead and get to write with out. As a quick synopsis of the story, quick summary of the story, we looked at it last week as well. This is set in the future, far future, for Ray Bradbury. For us, it's a little bit closer, but it's set in the far future where books are completely illegal. In fact, even houses, because it's so far in the future, are completely fireproof. And because they're fireproof, firemen no longer have a job. So they are repurposed to burn houses down instead of saving houses. So they are going to be burning any houses that they find books in. What you do is if you think a neighbor has a book, then you type in or you send in a kind of I'm a snitch. This is what I think they might have. And they come and burn your whole house down. And sometimes, if you're not careful enough, you might get burned and alive as well, if you're not careful. So, that is just a quick little synopsis of the story in general. Let's go ahead and begin with our main character, Guy Montag. This is going to be his point of view right here from the very beginning. It starts off. It was a pleasure to burn. It was a special pleasure to see things eaten, to see things blackened and changed. With the brass nozzle in his fists, with his great python spitting its venomous kerosene upon the world, the blood pounded in his head, and his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor playing all the symphonies of blazing and burning to bring down the tatters and charcoal ruins of history. Like I said, if you don't start off ready for this one, you might get confused pretty easily. Notice already that we're talking about things being burned. It's a special thing to see things eaten, see things blackened and changed. All these things are talking about burning. All of them are talking about burning. With the brass nozzle on his fists, with this great python, what does a fireman have usually at a scene of a fire that looks like a giant snake and has a metal tip of it?
Like the hose.
It's a hose. It's a water hose, right? But because this is set far in the future, remember, water hoses no longer shoot water, putting out fires. They instead, as it tells us, they spit out kerosene, which is a type of gas. All right? So what this is talking about is this water hose is now a gas hose. It spits out gas so that it can make the houses truly burn. Because if they're fireproof, these houses, it takes a lot more effort to make the house burn. How many of y'all have ever burned something, like with a lighter, or maybe as a kid, you have taken a magnifying glass and burned ants before, if you're that type of kid. Or if you just like setting fires, a pyromaniac, then it's a little bit exciting. Whenever you get to actually take kerosene and spray it on a fire, the fire whooshes up. It's a lot of fun. Heck, in fact, rednecks make a living, not really make a living, but make life out of this. My brother-in-law is a He's a redneck of rednecks, all right? He lives down in Mahalia. He just got a new gun safe because he needs 3 gun safes apparently for all of his ammo and whatnot. For his wedding, for his bachelor party, we went to one of his friend's house and shot guns at targets. In fact, one of them ricocheted and shot my brother in the stomach. That was interesting. But also, at the end of the night, to kind of do a last hurrah, we shot Tamarite and made a giant explosion. This is something that it's a lot of fun doing. It really does make the blood pound in your head. It makes you feel powerful in some way. Same thing here. So he's sitting there with his hose, he's spitting kerosene or gas onto this massive fire, making it larger. So the blood pounds in his head. And his hands are the hands of some amazing conductor, playing all the symphonies of blazing and burning to bring down the tatters and charcoal ruins of history. He's burning things. He's destroying books. He's destroying history right here. And when it says that his hands were the hands of some amazing conductor, that's a really big use of metaphor happening right there. With his symbolic helmet, numbered 451. So his symbolic helmet is labeled with 451, which of course should make us think of the title, The Temperature Which Books Burn. The temp. On his stolid head, and his eyes all orange flame, with the thought of what came next. So, his eyes are all orange flame. He knows what he's about to do, with the thought of what came next. He flicked the igniter, and the house jumped up in a gorging fire that burned the evening sky red and yellow and black. He strode in a swarm of fireflies. You're going to get really confused if you don't think about this one. All right? He strode in a swarm of fireflies. With this one, think about ashes. Whenever you burn something, there's always going to be little, what you could call fireflies, rushing up from what you've been burning. It's just embers and little sparks happening. That's what they're going to see there. The sparks from the ashes. Sparks from ashes. Things being burned. Heck, if you burn a piece of paper, you can do that pretty safely if you have, on your driveway even. You're going to see little sparks coming off. That's what that is. It's sparks from what you're burning. He wanted above all, like the old joke, to shove a marshmallow on a stick in the furnace, while the flapping, pigeon-winged books died on the porch. Can books die? No, they don't have feelings. That would be kind of creepy. If I ripped a page out of one of these books and it screamed, that would be kind of weird. All right? So, these pigeon-winged books died on the porch. Right here. It's going to be good use of personification. Personification. Because books cannot die on the porch. So, the pigeon-winged books died on the porch and in the lawn of the house, while the books went up in sparkling whirls and blew away on a wind turned black with burning. Smoke. If you've ever seen fire from a long distance, you can tell it's there because of all the smoke. It turns the sky black or dark with burning. Montag grinned, the fierce grin of all men singed and driven back by flame. If you've ever been to a bonfire, you've felt this before. Like if the bonfire is really large in front of you, you might have to get pushed back a little bit. And it's kind of frightening almost, enough to make you even smile for some strange reason. He knew that when he returned to the firehouse, he might wink at himself, a minstrel man. Minstrel is a singer. So a man who is singing is obviously a man who is happy. Burnt corked. If you've ever been burned, you know that your skin changes a little bit. It becomes a little shiny almost. And it usually hurts a good deal. Burnt corked in the mirror. Later, going to sleep, he would feel the fiery smile still gripped by his face muscles in the dark. It never went away, that smile. It never ever went away as long as he remembered. So tell me, does this guy like his job or not?
He loves it.
He absolutely loves it. Thank you, Sebastian, there. He absolutely loves his job. He loves his job. He does. Is loving your job a good thing?
Yeah.
You would think so,
Yeah.
right? You've all probably seen teachers who did not like their job before. They're not super happy people to be around all the time. This guy obviously loves his job, but here's one thing though. What if my job was to, like if I lived like 100 or say 500 years ago, and my job was to execute people? Would it be good that I loved my job?
No.
What if I lived in the time of Nazi Germany and I was a Nazi? Would I love my job? Would it be good that I love my job?
No.
Probably not. So depending on how good or how well your job is, or how good at the job it is, depends on whether or not you should like it or not. This guy's entire job is to burn people's houses down if they break the minor law of having a book. That's it. But he loves his job. This tells us a little bit about him. Now, just because you love your job, does that mean the rest of your life is put together and perfect? No, I love my job, but let me tell you, my life sometimes is insane, and it feels like it's falling apart every once in a while. We're going to see the exact same thing happening in this guy's life here, as soon as he starts walking home, in fact. So firemen, as you should hopefully know, live in their firehouse. Generally speaking, they will stay there for about, I think it's 3 days on, 2 days off, or something like that. So now this guy is going home. He hung up his black beetle-colored helmet and shined it. He hung his flame-proof jacket neatly. He showered luxuriously, and then whistling, hands in pockets, walked across the upper floor of the fire station and fell down the hole. At the last moment, when disaster seemed positive, he pulled his hands from his pockets and broke his fall by grasping the golden pole. He slid to a squeaking halt, the heels 1 inch from the concrete floor downstairs. How many of y'all have ever visited a firehouse before? A fire station? Yeah, as kids, it's pretty common to do. Or maybe you even, since a lot of y'all probably lived around here growing up, maybe you got to go to the Fireman Museum in Memphis. Now, it's really common to remember and kind of think about firefighters having a big pole throughout, from the top floor to the bottom floor, so that they don't have to take the stairs. They can just jump down the pole to the ground level. That's what he's talking about here. But I think personally, I would be terrified of falling, let's say, roughly 20 feet and not being terrified the whole time, grabbing onto the pole from the very beginning. This guy does not do that, though. He falls down the hole, and only at the last moment, when disaster seemed positive, he pulled his hands from his pockets and broke his fall by grasping the golden pole. That tells us a lot about this guy. Yeah, sure, he's happy. He's hands in his pockets. He's whistling. But he's reckless as all get out. Usually, if you like your life, you're going to be careful with your life. You're not going to want to hurt yourself too often. But this guy's reckless. That's supposed to be R-E-C. Looks like another E, though. Reckless. He walked out of the fire station along the midnight street toward the subway, where the silent air-propelled train slid soundlessly down its lubricated flue in the earth, and let him out with a great puff of warm air and onto the cream-tiled escalator rising to the suburb. So, this just means he goes home right here, right? He goes home. At the very least, he goes to his neighborhood. He gets to his neighborhood. This is a really common thing in some major cities. You'll have this, or even like if you go to like Japan and things like that, they have trains everywhere. We don't necessarily, but it could be seen as a really far-fetched idea that everywhere you go, you can just jump on a train and get to basically where you need to be. That's kind of an idea that 50 years ago, when this story was written, seemed like an insane idea. You don't have to walk. You don't have to deal with too much driving yourself. You can just jump on a train and be taken anywhere you need to, even back to your house. Whistling, he let the escalator waft him into the still night air. He walked toward the corner, thinking little at all about nothing in particular. Before he reached the corner, however, he slowed, as if a wind had sprung up from nowhere, as if someone had called his name. The last few nights, he had had the most uncertain feelings about the sidewalk just around the corner here, moving in the starlight toward his house. He had felt that a moment prior, in case you don't know, means before. A moment before. To making the turn, someone had been there. The air seemed charged with a special calm, as if someone had waited there quietly, and only a moment before he came, simply turned into a shadow and let him through. Perhaps his nose detected a faint perfume. Perhaps the skin on the backs of his hands, on his face, felt the temperature rise at this one spot, where a person standing might raise the immediate atmosphere 10 degrees for an instant. There was no understanding it. Each time he made the turn, he saw only the white, unused, buckling sidewalk, with perhaps on one night something vanishing swiftly across the lawn before he could focus his eyes or speak. So as he's turning the corner here, he thinks someone is there. Around the corner. He has felt this, and you might feel this as well. Maybe you've been at home by yourself, but all of a sudden you thought you heard something. Or you're like, oh, I know someone's here. You go get your bat or something. You go get something to protect yourself. When you go investigate it, there's no one there. But you feel like, no, there was someone here. Maybe you have even felt this if you've been playing hide and go seek as children, or even now, even if you go play hide and go seek, where you think there's someone really close by. I know it. I just don't know where. He felt the same way. In this moment, before he turns the corner, he knows someone was just here. In fact, even one night he thought he saw something, vanishing swiftly across a lawn. In those moments of when someone might be there, right there, he says he could tell maybe from a slight temperature change that he could feel on his skin, as if someone was right there a moment ago. Maybe he smelled some perfume or something like that. He doesn't know, but he just feels like someone was there these past couple of nights he's been going home. But now tonight he slowed almost to a stop. His inner mind, his imagination, reaching out to turn the corner for him, had heard the faintest whisper. Breathing? Or was the atmosphere compressed merely by someone standing very quietly there waiting? So he turned the corner. So this is a slow build-up of tension right here. All this idea right here. It's going to be a build-up of tension. Heck, if someone was going to surprise you or try to scare you, or heck, if someone's just waiting there behind a corner, maybe they're trying to hurt you. We don't know. So that mystery of not knowing who is around this corner and why they are there is a buildup of tension for us. It's also creating the idea of mystery and suspense along with it. But he turns the corner. The autumn leaves blew over the moonlight pavement in such a way as to make the girl who was moving there seem fixed to a sliding walk, letting the motion of the wind and the leaves carry her forward. Her head was half bent to watch her shoes stir the circling leaves. Her face was slender and milk white, and in it was a kind of gentle hunger that touched over everything with tireless curiosity. It was a look almost of pale surprise. The dark eyes were so fixed to the world that no more escaped them. Her dress was white, and it whispered. He almost thought he heard the motion of her hands as she walked, and and the infinitely small sound now, the white stir of her face turning when she discovered she was a moment away from a man who stood in the middle of the pavement waiting. So he turns the corner, and who is there? A girl. Now this is a full-grown man. I believe it, if I remember correctly, he's roughly in his mid-30s here. So a girl is going to be someone who is much younger, more likely in her teenage years. So they see a girl here. The girl who is moving there. Now this girl is described in numerous ways. We'll see this, though. The most common one that we have are two ideas. Her face is slender and milk white. We're going to see a lot of imagery of her being milk white, as her being really pale. This could be for two different reasons. One being because it's late at night, so we're going to have the moon. Moonlight. If you're already a slightly pale person and you're out during the moon, light is shining on you, you're going to even look paler. Also, we're going to see this really fierce intelligence where she's always asking questions. And in it was a gentle kind of hunger that touched over everything with tireless curiosity. And circle that, tireless curiosity. Always asking questions. She's going to be curious almost constantly. So her eyes are going to move over everything with almost a question. Every single time her eyes land on something. She's going to be wondering, what's with that one? Why is that color? Why is this over here like that? I wonder what life is about. She's always going to be asking questions. So her eyes have this look of a tireless curiosity. He continues because he's just turned this corner and this girl's just standing there. So he's just like, what? So of course, she's going to be kind of freaked out when all of a sudden a full-grown man turns the corner and surprises her. He almost thought he heard the motion of her hands as she walked, and the infinitely small sound now, the white stir of her face turning when she discovered she was a moment away from a man who stood in the middle of the pavement, waiting. The trees overhead made a great sound of letting down their dry rain. Their dry rain would mean what? What do trees have that they drop? Leaves, yes. This also tells us a little bit of our setting. When in the year would this happen?
Autumn.
Usually around the fall or autumn time. So leaves. And this is going to be fall. It's going to tell us a little bit about when this is taking place in the year.
It does say the autumn leaves.
Yep. Even tells you up here as well, the autumn leaves. Yep. Usually, though, as an author will give you more than just one time telling you the setting time. They'll give you multiple times. The girl stopped and looked as if she might pull back in surprise, but instead stood regarding Montag with eyes so dark and shining and alive that he felt he had said something quite wonderful. But he knew his mouth had only moved to say hello, and then when she seemed hypnotized by the salamander on his arm and the phoenix disc on his chest, he spoke again. So, we have these two ideas here now, a salamander and a phoenix disc on his chest. Out of the four phoenix disc, I'll just circle phoenix. Salamander and phoenixes, what element of life, let's say water, earth, air, or fire, do they represent? Fire. All right, notice his job, remember, is to burn things down. So, fire. These are going to be the symbols of their society, of this government or whatever, of his job that he has. He is a fireman. So he has a salamander on his arm, and he has a phoenix disc on his chest. Of course, he said. You're a new neighbor, aren't you? And you must be. She raised her eyes from his professional symbols. The fireman. Her voice trailed off. How oddly you say that. I'd have known it with my eyes shut, she said slowly. Oh, what, the smell of kerosene? My wife always complains, he laughed. You never wash it off completely. Haven't you ever spilled gas before?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a horrible smell. Or if you've gotten it on your clothes, it sticks to you and does not let go. So, we can even see that today in our own lives, that kerosene does not really wash off completely, not usually. No, you don't, she said in awe. He felt she was walking in a circle about him, turning him in for in, shaking him quietly and emptying his pockets without once moving herself. So he feels, that she is analyzing him. That's what he feels like, at least. Now, let's be honest here. How many of y'all have come home one day and your mom was sitting there going, how's your day? And how she looks at you, you feel like she is trying to see inside of you a little bit. She's trying to understand, what have you done wrong today? What have you been doing that you probably shouldn't have been doing? That's exactly how she is looking at him now. Remember her tireless curiosity? She's always asking questions. And it makes him feel as if she's just staring at him. And she's trying to understand everything about him. She's trying to, as it says, turn him end for end. Walking in a circle about him. Shaking him quietly. And emptying his pockets without once moving herself. She is studying, analyzing him. Kerosene, he said, because the silence had lengthened, is nothing but perfume to me. Does it seem like that, really? Of course, why not? She gave herself time to think of it. I don't know. She turned to face the sidewalk, going toward their homes. Do you mind if I walk back with you? I'm Clarice McKellen. So, we're going to be talking about Miss Clellan for quite some time. McClellan. It's a very Irish name. Ray Bradbury, our author, uses his last name really often. In fact, in There Will Come Soft Rains, that was the name of the family there as well. We know that because the house voice asks a Mrs. McClellan if she wants a poem read to her. So he uses this name pretty often. I'm not entirely sure why. I would have to study his life a little bit more to figure it out. So she and him are now sitting there in this part of the neighborhood, and she asks to walk back towards their house together, or their houses together. Clarice, Guy Montag, come along. What are you doing out so late, wandering around? How old are you? So, now we're going to have him he's kind of on the back foot. He feels like she just analyzed him like crazy. By the way, this is going to be our character's full name. Full name of protagonist. Guy Montag. You'll see him referenced as Guy. You'll see him referenced as Montag. It's pretty common for both of them. I've never known someone with the name of Guy before, but that's kind of strange. They walked in the warm, cool, blowing night on the silvered pavement, and there was the faintest breath of fresh apricots and strawberries in the air. And he looked around and realized this was quite impossible so late in the year. What is common for things to smell like fruit? A fruity scent of apricots and strawberries and things like that. If you're not somewhere near where those things are grown, well, it's common for something to smell like that. Perfume, exactly. Yes. So, fresh apricots and strawberries. This is going to be a scent thing. It's going to be a sensory detail for your sense of smell. It's going to be for her perfume. Oops. There was only the girl walking with him now, her face bright as snow in the moonlight. He knew she was working his questions around, seeking the best answers she could possibly give. So not only does she always ask a bunch of questions because she seems so intelligent and so curious all the time, but she also takes her time to answer questions. So this is going to be kind of showing us that she is a very thoughtful person who is very slow and deliberate about her statements. Well, she said, I'm 17 and I'm crazy. That's kind of true for some of y'all even, and even though some of y'all are only 16, you're crazy as well. I'm 17 and I'm crazy. My uncle says the two always go together, because they do. Y'all get nuts when you get to 11th grade. When people ask your age, he said, always say 17 and insane. Isn't this a nice time of night to walk? I like to smell things and look at things, and sometimes stay up all night, walking and watch the sunrise. They walked on again, so that we have her age. She's 17, and she's a little bit crazy as well. He will definitely think she is a little bit strange as we go along. They walked on again in silence, and finally she said thoughtfully, you know, I'm not afraid of you at all. Should you be afraid of firemen? Well, no, you should be able to run to them and ask for help if you need to. So why would she be afraid of firemen? Yes, they burn houses down, right? People, while they shouldn't be, I completely understand, are a little bit nervous around a lot of police officers. And I think a lot of times it's because they have that gun on their hip. It makes people a little bit nervous. Heck, it's kind of nerve-wracking a little bit. So some people are afraid of people like the police, even though they shouldn't be. Same thing here. He's a part of his job's part of the government. He has a listed job that people pay him for, and it's supposed to be a good thing for them. But we see that his job still makes her a little bit nervous. Not quite enough to be completely afraid. He was surprised. Why should you be? So many people are. Afraid of firemen, I mean. But you're just a man, after all. So he saw himself in her eyes, suspended in two shining drops of bright water. What part of your body looks like it is partially made out of liquid? Your eyes, yes. That's the type of language that can confuse a lot of teenage readers if they don't slow down with it. The two shining drops of bright water is going to be related to her eyeballs, her eyes. And you can see yourself reflected in other people's eyes, especially if you're close enough. You can see yourself reflected. And in that reflection, it's really tiny, so he could see himself suspended in two shining drops of bright water, himself dark and tiny in fine detail, the lines about his mouth, everything there, as if her eyes were two miraculous bits of violet amber that might capture and hold him intact. Her face, turned to him now, was fragile milk crystal with a soft and constant light in it. Remember we talked about how she is going to look very pale in the moonlight. Pale in moonlight. It was not the hysterical light of electricity, but what? But the strangely comfortable and rare and gently flattering light of the candle. So she looks, some people look kind of intense, and they look like, man, I don't really want to be around them too much. They're kind of hysterical, it seems like. Hers, what drives behind her, is really a more comfortable and rare light of the candle. So she does not seem crazy. Instead, she is comfortable to be around. And you do this pretty naturally. Some people just look comfortable to be around, or they just seem comfortable to be around. While some other people, with maybe their intensity, might feel like, I don't really want to be around them too much. One time, then he goes into this little brief short story from his past. One time, when he was a child and a power failure, his mother had found and lit a last candle, and theirs had been a brief hour of rediscovery, of such illumination that space lost its vast dimensions and drew comfortably around them. And they, mother and son, alone, transformed, hoping that the power might not come on again too soon. And then Clarice McKellen said, "Do you mind if I ask, how long have you worked at being a fireman?" "Since I was 20, 10 years ago." So now we actually have the age of him. He's actually 30. I was slightly wrong there. He is now 30. Years old. "Do you ever read any of the books you burn?" He laughed. "That's against the law." So now we get this final statement that this reading, in fact, is against the law. This is the first time we see this in the story itself. We do know that he is burning books in the very beginning. He's burning the charcoal ruins of history. But now we actually get full confirmation that reading books is completely against the law. So reading is illegal. How many of y'all would not mind if all of a sudden we were not allowed to read any book ever again? At least a few people, all right? Only a little bit hurtful because I love reading so much. That's actually all we're going to be reading today. Just those first 5 pages. That is it. Everything else is going to be picked up tomorrow with page 6 through 12, as we're going to be reading through tomorrow, all right? So that is it for now, ladies and gents. Good job. We're going to be taking this really slow in the beginning because a lot of people can get confused easily by the book if you don't take it seriously the first couple of about 20 pages or so. After that, we're going to pick it up a little bit faster and faster, especially next week. And I'll be eventually just having you read by yourself, and it should come pretty easily from there. So we're going to be taking it really slow and easy to make sure that you are able to get it. All right?